Hi friends, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Here's what we're discussing today. So today I'm taking up a request, an issue from a subscriber, somebody who wanted me to speak specifically about the issue of non-disclosure agreements in the fast food industry. Now, at the outset, we need to sort of take a look at what kinds of employees might be asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement. If you have somebody at, let's say, McDonald's, who is a manager or an assistant manager, somebody who routinely looks at training materials produced by what McDonald's calls Hamburger University up in Chicago, if they are exposed to certain proprietary processes. For example, maybe how they keep a Big Mac from getting soggy while it waits for someone to buy it. I don't know. Any number of things, I suppose, could be a trade secret with respect to the design of the restaurant, with respect to how the internal accounting system and registers work. Those are the kinds of things that someone in a management capacity might be asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement about, and they would have to do that. Now, a non-disclosure agreement, of course, just means they can't reveal those secrets to someone else. It doesn't actually keep them from going to work for someone else. But a low-level employee, in other words, a burger flipper, somebody who works the cash register, somebody whose job is to say, do you want fries with that? That is not somebody that would normally be associated with a non-disclosure agreement. So I want to make sure that I say this up front. Nothing in this video is legal advice. You know, that's always the disclaimer at the end of this video, but I want to point it out here in the event that someone uses this information inappropriately. If you have an issue with a non-disclosure agreement that you're being asked to sign or that you've already signed, you need to see an attorney in your jurisdiction. I can't help you because I'm not licensed anywhere except Missouri, and I don't take private cases any longer. I am more or less semi-retired. Nothing in this video is legal advice. So back in 2016, Lisa Madigan, the Attorney General of Illinois, sued Jimmy John's. Here's what Jimmy John's was doing. They had a non-disclosure agreement that essentially combined both a non-disclosure agreement as well as a covenant not to compete. And basically, this non-disclosure agreement asked these employees not to take a job at a competing sandwich shop. And that is unlawful because a non-disclosure agreement is designed to protect confidential information. Well, when you go into any Jimmy John's in the country, you can look across the counter and watch them make your sandwich. They don't take the bread back to a semi-dark room and, sort of covertly slap, ham and cheese and mayo and lettuce on your sandwich and then bring it out as a finished work of art that has been made somehow in the dark like a photograph, and that just is not what they do. Anybody could watch and see exactly how they make sandwiches. So the issue was really more of, why are you asking any of your employees to enter into a covenant not to compete when they are not competing with Jimmy John's by taking a job in another restaurant? So I thought it might be good to just sort of go over what it is that's required in one of these agreements. So a non-disclosure agreement is a legal contract, and it outlines that confidential material, knowledge, or information that the parties want to share with one another have to be protected. And for an NDA to be binding on somebody who signs it, several things need to be present. Like any contract, there has to be a clear offer and acceptance by both parties. The person who wants the person to sign the agreement must offer to disclose confidential or trade secret information. The person who wants to be employed must say, okay, I will protect that, I will accept the offer of this confidential information. That's the offer and acceptance part. Then there has to be some form of consideration. And usually it is the exchange of promises. I promise to give you confidential information, and me, as the employee, I promise not to disclose it to the world. That's consideration. Those things have to be present. Both parties have to have legal obligations under the agreement. That means that both parties, both the party who's disclosing the information and the party who's receiving the information, have to be bound by the terms of the agreement. So, for example, the disclosing party agrees to provide confidential information, and they are bound to do that. And the receiving party agrees to disclose, not to disclose, or misuse that information, and they are bound by the agreement to do that. The non-disclosure agreement has to clearly define what constitutes confidential information. And this more or less gets back to the Jimmy John's issue, because it's really hard to figure out what kind of confidential information might be involved in making a sandwich, especially since it's been done by mothers since the dawn of time almost. This definition has to be broad enough to encompass any information that the party wants to protect, and it also has to be specific enough to provide clarity so that somebody knows what is and what is not confidential information. The agreement needs to specify a reasonable duration, and if you're going to merge this with some kind of covenant not to compete, it has to have a reasonable sort of geographic limitation. In other words, you're not allowed to go to work for a sandwich shop within 10 miles of the shop that you're going to work for. But again, that's only if it's reasonable to bind you to that agreement. And all of those things have to be able to comply with local laws and regulations, including those govern both contracts, employment, and confidentiality. Ensuring that those elements are present in an NDA helps make sure the agreement is legally enforceable, and that's why it wasn't legally enforceable with Jimmy John's. Because the fast food workers were never exposed to company secrets. And unlike a manager at McDonald's who got Hamburger U information, these folks didn't get anything of that nature. They probably got a 5-minute discourse from a manager saying, bread, meat, slap meat on bread, slather a little mayo on there, close the sandwich, hand it across the counter after they pay. We're not talking about rocket science here. Now, I like a good Jimmy John's sandwich, don't get me wrong, but I would never sign a contract to go work there or sign an NDA to go work there, because that would make absolutely no sense. So NDAs are typically used to protect confidential information and trade secrets, but if they don't have that information, it's not protected and it's not binding, and a court is going to throw it out. Now, a trade secret, like I said before in other videos, something like the formula for Coca-Cola, that's a trade secret. A proprietary process, for example, maybe how the computer processes some kind of call-in or computer order. Maybe the interaction or the interplay between their website and individual stores. Maybe that could be a proprietary process that they want to protect. And they can certainly call somebody to account for that. If you get access to that system and understand at the cellular level how it works, it would be necessary and probably warranted to restrict that person with an NDA, but not the guy who's slapping meat on bread and throwing a little mayo on there. That guy doesn't know anything that could harm the company in the larger context. So, since the worker's role is really limited to making sandwich and doesn't involve access to confidential information, that's the main reason why Madigan sued and the main reason why she was able to force them into a settlement. Now, interestingly enough, Jimmy John's in a press release said, hey, wait, we never asked anybody, we never told anybody we were going to enforce this against them. We did it to make sure they understood how important the role was, in being a good employee, that you had to protect our information. So the major problem here for Jimmy John's really was one of optics, and it really looked like Jimmy John's intended to use this NDA as a means of keeping workers from changing jobs. Well, as we all know, you do that by paying a living wage. You pay people what they're worth. you don't violate the 13th Amendment with overly restrictive NDAs. And in case the 13th Amendment doesn't pop readily to mind, it's the amendment that outlawed slavery. It's probably worthwhile for a worker who's asked to sign an NDA to go get a legal opinion before they sign, and that's true whether they're working for Jimmy John's or NASA. And with respect to a fast food worker who's asked to sign a covenant not to compete or an NDA, you might want to call the National Labor Relations Board to find out if, under current law, those agreements are actually proper where you live. Well, that's what I have for you today. Hopefully you found this interesting, helpful, useful. If you would, please take a moment to do something nice for someone, something kind. I've been putting out some shorts about places that you can donate and organizations, kind acts that you can perform. Hopefully you find these useful and helpful as well. But irrespective of that, if you have any questions, put them in the comments down below, or you can email me at the address above. If you have a video request, like the person who requested this video, please put in the subject line video request like it shows up here. Well, that's what I have for you. Thank you so much for being here. And if you would, come on back and join me down here next time at the beach, where we'll talk about something else that maybe somebody else wants to know about. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.